Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro, and as ever, I'm joined by Marlene Royal.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello, Faster Masters. Nice to see everybody again. We're here.
Our 1 week off, and it feels like we've been away for months.
Well, we've been away for 2 weeks.
Is it 2?
Well, 14 days. We missed only one podcast, but between podcasts.
That's the thing. Hey, Cece has already joined us. This lady, you can set your clock by her. She's awesome. And anyone else who's joining us live, you can put comments below the live stream and we can see them. And if your comment is a question or a response to something that we're talking about, we absolutely welcome your live contribution. And in fact, it's a very, very nice part of our show, I think, the fact that, people get involved.
Yeah, we want more people involved, of course. If one person has a question, two have a question.
This is true. Actually, it's more than that. I think if one person has a question, 9 people thought about asking it and didn't ask it.
See?
Or is that complaints? Maybe it's...
No. Well, it's customer service. Everyone tells 9, for good or for bad. So
there you go. Quick, tell 9 of your friends. So today we have as our sponsors me, principally, because I have built the rowing retailer directory, which is on rowing.chat, and there's a link at the top that says directory. And if you want to find a coach, if you want to find a boat, if you want to find a supplier of rowing oars, if you want to find an erg supplier, if you want to go on a rowing holiday or a vacation, if you want some accessories, if you want some nutrition advice, trust me, it's all there. And we're adding more all the time. So if you know someone who runs a business that could be selling or is selling to people who are in the world of rowing, please send them over there, because there's a little link where you can fill in a form which automatically adds you to the listing once I've checked it and approved it. And so I would love for you to go take a look and tell me things that I've got wrong, because I'm very conscious of the fact that I've just collected this information. We are getting in touch with all of the people we've got listed and asking them to check their details. But I respect that it's a busy time of year for so many people. And second sponsor is the Rowing Tales Book 2020. It's live, it's published. It is in Amazon, in print and Kindle format, and it's also on the rowperfect.co.uk website. And if anyone would like to get all 4 copies of the 4 years I've done it, so 2017 right the way through to today, 2020, get in touch with me and I can give you a 30% discount off the whole thing. Sorry, yeah, £75 is the normal price. You can get it for £35, so it's a 50% discount plus shipping. So it slightly depends on where you live in the world, but you have to buy direct from me. You can't get that from anyone else. So if you want to, get your rowing bookshelves filled with some fun anecdotes, including the delightful one about an umpire who is refereeing a race, clearly a race on a river, and he is trying very hard to get the coxswains to do what he wants. And each of the coxswains apparently has the same surname. They're all called O'Leary. Oh. Drama while the umpire eventually works out why not all of them are doing the same thing. So that's where we're at with regards to sponsors. And I would absolutely love it if you are listening. Could you please go and share the Rowing Tales 2020 book information to your rowing friends, because I would love to get a whole load of sales in the run up to Christmas. Now, Marlene's working hard this week.
Yes, I'm getting ready for the U.S. Rowing Annual Convention, which started today, but tomorrow is the day that's designated to training topics. So I'm speaking tomorrow at 12:45, and my presentation is called Training for Life, Masters Rowing. And then, and I'm going to be talking about what it takes to stay on a good training track through the lifespan. Some really key points about that. Talking a lot about the big picture. I'm also going to talk a bit about what are the top competitive masters doing in their training today. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And then I'm also on the guest panel at 4:30 with other speakers from the training day. And some of the other speakers are Dr. Stephen Spieler, Stuart McGill, Will Ruth, Joe DeLeo, and Blake Gorley will be there, Karen Kalara. So that's a panel discussion at the end of the day. So I'm excited for that. I've been getting ready, and off we go tomorrow.
Fantastic. And I do think it's incredibly courageous of US Rowing to put on such a full program, knowing that it's going to be virtual. I think it's just fantastic. And I believe you don't have to be a US Rowing member to attend.
No. If you can register, anyone can register for the conference. The registration is on Regatta Central, and if there's basically just two different prices. If you're a US Rowing member, there's one price. If you're a non-member, there's another price. You can sign up for the whole package of the conference, because the conference is 5 days altogether, or you can sign up for just the training day or the day that you're interested in. And in about a week after the conference, all of the talks will have live links, and you will have access to those, I think, for 6 months. So if you can't catch because there's a lot of interesting talks going on at the same time. So if you can't catch everything, you can follow up. The next day is biomechanics. So like, I'm totally geared up for that one.
And how nice for you to be able to sit in the audience for once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love sitting in the audience. Put my earphones on. I can erg while I'm listening to Volker Nolte. He's one of my favorites,
Excellent. I've in the rest of my life been doing something for a few years now, which is called Unhurried Conversations, where a bunch of us meet virtually or in person, and we have no agenda. We talk as it moves us, but there is only one rule, which is that you have to have they call it a talking stick. You have to be holding the stick in order to talk. Now, virtually, we obviously all have our own, but you take it in turn, and it's very interesting how hard I personally find it to bring my entire presence and my consciousness to the present time, and to not do anything else at the same time while listening. So that sort of mindfulness, I suppose.
Yes. Well, actually, it's interesting, because I was thinking about this yesterday myself, and so many people have very busy schedules, but we really can only do one thing at a time, and we can really only row one stroke at a time, but we can really only do one thing at a time. And we just have to accept that sometimes certain things take longer usually than you think they will. Projects, writing, everything takes longer than you think it's going to take, but you really can only do one thing at a time. And we're limited by that, but, focus on it, complete it, at least that stage, and then move to the next thing, and it's the same thing to do quality work. It's the same thing to do quality training, just keep your mind on it, focus on the quality, complete that portion for whatever you're going to do, or that mini project, and then go to the next thing.
Yeah, one of the things that I find particularly is that my brain has a terrible habit of partway through something say, oh, you must write to Marlene and tell her this, or you must remember to do that. And for me, the discipline is to capture that thought, write it down there and then, but then to set it aside so that I can come back to it later, but just to stay in the flow of doing one thing at a time. And that's been a really challenging discipline for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's important, not to lose that thought. I have a little ticket system.
Ticket system. We'll hear more about that. Now, for people who are interested, I have a beautiful background photograph today, which you can see there. And there's the stern of a little yellow single scull. And the picture is Lake Hayes, which is just outside Queenstown in the South Island of New Zealand. I was there on a training course, and the local club were generous enough to let me borrow a single and go for a row. It's actually much windier than it looks in the picture. The picture looks lovely and just gentle riffles, but I'm actually in the wind shadow there. I had to kind of like loop around the end of the lake backwards and forwards, because I was like, that looks just a little more rough than I'm particularly comfortable with. Just me in a PFD and sit in a borrowed boat. Now, let's get on to our first topic for today, which is exercises for forearm strength. We had this question in from a listener who says, could you recommend some exercises to improve my finger and forearm strength? I've been rowing recreational for 3 years, but I'm looking to take my rowing to the next level and start racing. My fingers and forearms often tire from trying to feather correctly without using my wrists, and erging doesn't address these areas. So, Marlene, top recommendations.
Yes, and actually in our comments, we have somebody asking about this as well. First of all, I would say look at the size of your oar handle grip. Because if you're rowing with an oar handle grip that's not the right size for your hand, that may put more stress on your fingers than you want. So that's one thing to look for. Like if your handle is too small, you may feel like you've got too much tightness in your fingers. And if you feel like it's too big, you may feel like you can't quite roll the handle as much as you need it to feather. But one of the things, and I know Rebecca and I, we've talked about this before, is when you're feathering and squaring, first of all, just think about the initiation of the movement versus it being even though your blade is moving at 90 degrees, okay, you don't have to be responsible for that entire 90 degrees. You need to be responsible for initiating the motion and then relax your fingers, and then initiate the motion and relax your fingers. So if you like quarter feather and then relax your fingers, your blade's going to fall down into the bottom of the oarlock. And then if you start to curl it a quarter and relax your fingers, the blade's going to square. So sometimes you may be trying to make too big of a motion. So that's one point. The other point is you have to, before I get to the exercises, you have to make sure that when you are if you're going to feather with your fingers, you have to make sure that the back of your hand and that your wrist never falls underneath the handle. So when you're at the release position and you're going to tap down, you have to make sure that your height is correct so that you can press down on the handles. Because if you don't have downward pressure or weight over the top of the handle, you're not going to be able to do it, because you need that weight over the top to help you roll the collar or the sleeve in the oarlock. So those are two things that if those two things aren't in place, you may have trouble with it. But
so just pause there. Marlene's pointed out some really good things, which I think it's now useful for us to go back to the basics and point out a couple of really straightforward things. I'm just going to tilt my camera here. So firstly, where do you finish your stroke? And you can see my hands. I've got my left hand higher than my right, and the back of my thumb here is on my lower ribs, or ladies, you could say it's on your bra strap. So where do you finish the stroke? So this is about the height of the oarlock relative to the height of your torso when you're sitting in the boat. So if you are, as Marlene says, like this, so your elbows are lower, you haven't got this straight line, knuckle, wrist, elbow, then you need to look at the setup in the boat and your own posture. So if you can't get to this position at the finish, if you're like up here, it's pretty hard to actually push down because it's so much higher up your chest. So definitely look to the basics of your setup in the static positions, and you check that by sitting with your legs straight at the finish position, leaning back in your finish position, and square your blades in the water. Cover the spoon entirely. So that means you need a little bit of upwards pressure because your blade has some natural buoyancy in it, which will make it sit, maybe 1 centimeter above the water. That doesn't matter. But the point is, bury them entirely and then see where you are set up to at the finish.
Yes, exactly. So that mechanical position is going to help you a lot right there with feathering and squaring. So with your finger strength, let's see if I can get in the camera. With your finger strength, feathering and squaring happens from this middle joint. So opening and closing, I'm trying to get in the camera here. Opening and closing is one exercise that you need to practice. So here I'm curling my fingers under, and I'm just going to practice lifting my knuckles up and then putting them back down, and then lifting my knuckles up and then putting them back down. And this is one exercise that trains the extensor muscles of your fingers, because your extensor muscles are not very strong. And these are the muscles on the top of your forearm, and they insert on the outside of your elbow. So when people have tennis elbow, that's related to their extensors. Your flexor muscles are 4 or 5 or 6 times stronger because they're meant to grip. And the purpose of your extensor muscles are to take the fingers out of flexion. That's all that they're meant to do. So we need that for rowing, and these muscles aren't very strong. So if you just start practicing that, lifting the base of the fingers up, and you start practicing that a few sets of 10 throughout the day, you're going to find right away that these extensors are going to be tired. So you have to prepare them on land to work on that motion in the boat. If you are looking at overall finger strength, I would do things like separating your fingers, lifting one finger up, moving it side to side, apart. You can use elastics. I don't have elastics. You can use elastics. Yeah, you can use elastics like a rubber band and practice spreading your fingers apart against the rubber band like a cupping motion. You know, that helps strengthen there. You have lots of little muscles in between your fingers that separate your fingers and bring them back together. And these interosseous muscles you can strengthen with elastic like a rubber band, this kind of motion. Those are the little what we call intrinsic muscles in the hand. For your wrist and your forearm, you need to do something like wrist curls, where you hold a small weight, you stabilize your forearm, and then you can work on extension, or you can turn your hand over and you can work on flexion. And the important thing is with this motion is to stabilize your forearm and just have your wrist stay over the edge of the table. Okay, so your forearm is flat, and this way you isolate the motion of your wrist, and then you also do side to side. Okay, that's important too, just for the overall strength of your wrist and your forearm. An old-fashioned exercise that we used to do, that is actually a really good exercise, is take a small weight, maybe 2.5 pounds or 3 pounds, little small weight, tie a string on it, and then put it up through a dowel, and then roll it up to the top of the dowel, and then roll it back down to the floor. We call those wrist curls. Those are old-fashioned exercises that we used to do in the boathouse that are actually really, really good for conditioning your hands. But with our question about people just starting to get osteoarthritis, one thing is don't push hard. You know, pay attention to how long you're rowing so that you're not pushing yourself into a state of inflammation. If you exercise is very good when you have arthritis, but you don't want to push it over so that you've done too much so that you're getting inflammation and swelling. So it's better to row more often, but maybe you need to watch how long that you row. I would also really guard, do not use your thumb to apply pressure to the oarlock. That for people who have osteoarthritis, you're putting a lot of pressure right here. If you're trying to use your thumb to put pressure to the oarlock, you don't need to put that much pressure, and your thumb is simply not designed to manage all of your body weight. So think about, as Rebecca was showing, staying over the top of the handle. Keep your body weight over the handle. That's going to keep some weight into the pin as long as you stay over the weight with some weight in the hands.
So Andres Carrazzo says these are the lumbrical muscles.
Lumbricals, yeah, these are lumbricals. So lumbricals, they flex the MPs and extend the IPs. That's it. So this kind of flat fist is a motion of your lumbricals. And so here, when I curl my fingers and then do that motion, that exercise is a different flexor muscle. So different flexors and different set of extensors. And this does one set and this does another set.
Now, moving on to rowing drills. So one of the things that I think it's worth addressing if you find that you're having these challenges is to work out exactly how tight you are holding the handle at the different parts of the rowing stroke. So while you are rowing, bring your consciousness down into your hands, and just while you're rowing along, give yourself a mental score out of 10. Am I gripping the handles, with a 10 out of 10, which is kind of like a white knuckle ride? Or are they totally loose and floppy, which is not what you want either, because then you have no poise and no control, and certainly none of that downwards pressure that Marlene was describing earlier. After you've worked out what sort of grip tension you think you have, try and identify whether it's different between your two hands. And this depends if you're doing sweep or sculling, and whether it changes during your rowing stroke. Some people grip more after they've squared and when they're on the power phase. So they're holding on tight while they're applying power. Other people do it differently. So try and work out for yourself exactly where it's happening. As a rule of thumb about grip, the correct grip for a rowing oar or sculling handle is firm enough to imagine you're holding a kitten or a puppy or a small bird in your hands. If you've ever held a small animal, there is a grip which is intermediate between tight and loose, where the animal ceases to struggle. So if you've ever picked up a little wriggly kitten, you hold them, it's a lightly firm touch, and they relax into your grip. They feel safe and secure. Obviously, hold them too tight, and that's not good for their health. We don't want to kill any kittens on this show. But also, if you're too loose, they can wriggle around too much. So that's how I describe to people how tightly you should hold on to the oar handle.
Yes, we have an interesting question here from Jeanette about forearms getting tight. Of course, definitely.
Just read it out, Marlene, for our audio listeners.
Okay, so it says, Jeanette here, my forearms used to wake me up at night with very restless feelings. Should those muscles be stretched as well? Absolutely. And I would if one, that's probably a sign that you're really gripping too hard if your forearms are getting locked up, because that's causing from not getting enough circulation or the muscles not relaxing. But I would say if you tend to have that as an issue, stretch as soon as you get out of the boat. Like as soon as you put your oars and your boat away, stretch out your forearms, and with your arms extended out straight and bending down. Yeah, like that. And then also doing drawing back on each individual finger feels really, really good. But in general, I think one of the things that becomes an issue is, remember, when you feather and on the recovery, just let the oar sit in the oarlock. You don't have to do anything.
I agree.
That's the main point. You don't have to do anything. And one of my favorite, I think, Rebecca, Daniela Nechalova from the Czech Republic, right? She used to be the lightweight sculler for the Czech Republic. She's, I think, the Concept 2 dealer in Czech Republic. I love her karate chop drill. We used to do this at CrashBs all the time, that you feather, and then on the recovery, you karate chop on the handle, and then you put your hands on, you put the blade in the water, karate chop. So you guide the oars with your hands in this position, then you put them back on. As soon as you feather, karate chop, and all you have to do is put a little bit of weight over the handles and just let them sit in the oarlocks. So there's no reason there should even be any tension on your fingers here,
And That's very similar to the open palm sculling drill, where when you are feathered, you just flatten your palm so that you have downward pressure on the handle, but you're not actually holding it at all. It's just sitting here underneath. You want it to sit along here where your palm joins your fingers. You may even be able to see all my fine calluses that I have there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a question of weight and keeping, because if you get in the habit of relaxing your fingers like that, that's going to keep the circulation going in your forearms. And in the old days, when we used to do bench pull tests way back when, in the old days before ergs were invented, every time you set the bar down, you had to do this. Yeah. You had to do this. Otherwise, there's no way that you were going to do well on that test. So Andreas asks about this. How about a trigger finger developed from rowing any device? Well, what a trigger finger is, it's when you get you get a swelling in your tendon, and on your fingers, you can't see them, but you have what are called anular ligaments. And anular ligaments are little crisscross ligaments that go like that, and they hold your tendon along the bone. And they're little crisscrossy ligaments. So if you get a swelling in your tendon, what happens is it pulls under that ligament, and then it gets stuck and can't get back. So your finger can get stuck, and then you have to do that to get it back. So it's a swelling in the tendon. If you oftentimes, if you go see a hand doctor, or oftentimes they can sometimes do a little cortisone shot, and it'll take that swelling out. Otherwise, sometimes what they do is they actually, if there's a little procedure, they snip that annular ligament so it doesn't catch there anymore, if it doesn't resolve itself on its own. And the open fingers drill, I would say, Andres, open fingers drill, the karate chop drill. I was doing karate chop drill with pinky finger this fall, so just, just feather it and then relax. And then when you square, curl it, but don't go over the whole oar handle with the oar handle,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that should help.
Gravity is your friend when you're squaring and feathering. If you can get to 45 degrees, gravity will complete the rotation for you.
Exactly.
Now, our second topic for today is about endurance and speed. And this has come about because a large number of people are planning their January through March competition schedule. And in different parts of the world, the schedules are different. So one of the really big events in March in the US are the CrashBs, which of course are an indoor rowing competition, and they have a lot of different distances. And we got this great question in from a listener who basically says, if I can find the right bit of paper, here we go. How do I build my aerobic base while concurrently training for the CrashBs? I will be doing the 30-minute and the 500-meter event. Do I need to include additional low-intensity, long-duration workouts in addition to the plans we receive through Faster Masters? Or should I replace some of the existing workouts? So how do you train simultaneously for an event that requires some endurance base and some speed base?
Well, with this particular Faster Masters athlete, we determined through her testing that she needed to do more work on her aerobic base. And keep in mind that this is a long-term goal. Okay, so I said, this is going to take you. This is our goal for the year, right? And even though you're training, you want to compete in CrashBs, you need to, one, follow the plan. Okay, so there are definitely specific days that are low intensity. They're recovery workouts or low intensity workouts. Keep those in the program. The higher intensity workouts, keep those in the program. The main thing is not to skip those low intensity sessions. And if you have additional time, and because everybody maybe has a different amount of training volume, if you've got some additional time during your week, include a couple extra 40-minute rows. at low intensity. Or if you have a little bit of extra time to do some aerobic cross training, that's perfect where this fits in. So if you live in a winter climate and on Saturday you want to go out for a cross-country ski or snowshoe, that's a great way to build up your aerobic base, as long as you're not working too hard, okay? Keeping that low intensity. So if you have additional time and you want to add in a little bit of extra training along with your strength training, add in the category 6, add in the low intensity. Don't add in more high intensity. Add in the low intensity or add in cross training. And or on a day when, say the workout says it's a 60 minutes or 3 times 20-minute row. You have a little bit of extra time, do an extra 15 minutes, do an extra 10 minutes on some different rows. That little extra time adds up. So your aerobic base takes months and months and months and months and years to develop. It happen, that's where you just have to be invested in the time. So the thing is to be consistent with it and to keep up on that. And that low intensity work is going to help you hit some higher intensity work, because low intensity work does influence your VO max, and it's going to help you recover faster from harder sessions.
Yeah, so the Faster 5 is the core of our principles and our philosophy about approaching rowing as a master's athlete. You can buy it as a standalone product in our store. If you buy a subscription program, you get the Faster 5 free. And one of the Faster 5 is the fitness assessment. This allows you to individualize the program to your personal, unique needs. And it's really important to do this. Otherwise, as somebody said to us in our last podcast, I'm doing workouts which are great for 50-year-old fit men, but they don't suit me. And she worked that out for herself, because she just said, I can't even finish these. These are blowing me out. And that's why these are so important.
Absolutely.
Now, our last little thing for winter, and recognizing that, we're coming into early mid-December, and I know that there are lots of holiday events coming up, and I know that some people will be able to travel, and obviously some won't. But let's say there's a disruption on the horizon for yourself, for your own rowing training, and for your group that you train with. We've talked in the past about things to do and how to motivate yourself through your holiday and how to plan that in advance. If you're on our newsletter list, it was in the last newsletter that we sent to you. You've got all the detailed answers there. But today I want to challenge you to keep your group together. So one of the things that I personally value hugely about rowing is the community around the club that we have. And your group is important in so many ways. You might be a person who can go out and train in a single every single day and you don't need any motivation. But trust me, as someone who's not like that, I really value having other people around, not just as accountability partners, but just as, friends. So I commend to you a couple of things. One is have an end of year gathering, however you do it, virtually or in person, a time when you can meet, raise a glass together, tell some funny stories, maybe have one of those fun mock prize givings, something like that, so that you can all mark the end of this year. Because I think most of us are mentally, if not actually, saying good riddance to 2020. Let's just get past this and move into the new year. And I think marking the end of that is important psychologically, but it also builds nice social bonds. And our club gave a very small amount of money to one of our members and told her to go onto eBay and find some things that could make trophies for us. So our logo is a swan with crossed oars. And she went and bought, those flying swans that you see go across people's living room walls or ornaments. So she found groups of 3 big big, middle, and small, in little china swans, and she found a glass swan, and she found a couple of brass swans, and then we got them mounted on little offcuts of wood, which someone donated from a building site. And so we have a whole load of awards, most of which don't actually have a name on them. So we can kind of make up a recipient when someone's done something quirky during the year. And these just make for a lot of fun, if you can. So we have the obvious crab of the year. My old club in London, you could only win the crab of the year if you fell in the most spectacular manner. You couldn't just fall in. You had to do it, you know, with an audience. Yeah, exactly. You definitely had to be seen doing it. And then we have an excuse of the year. And then we have something which is called the Handy Swan Award for the person who's like kind of there with the tools and helping out and just being a great kind of club member. We have best and most improved. We have beginner of the year. So you can think up a ton of categories. And of course, it's really important to tell the story. You know, Kevin, who's won excuse of the year twice. The first time because he said he just had a baby, and we said that was a lousy excuse. So I commend to you, have a get together, get the group together, and then keep them together. So through the holidays, check in from time to time, even if it's just a text message or a WhatsApp group message. How are you going? How are you managing to keep going on your training? Any funny moments to report in your life? You know, what's happening? Because then when you do get back home and you're, you know, ready to start in January back in your routine again, it becomes that much easier because you can say, hey, my first day back's Wednesday. Who else is around Wednesday? You know, and then people are used to checking that channel for updates. So value your group. Yeah. Any ideas?
Well, I have kind of a new group here. So I'm writing down some ideas that would be interesting to, you know, like create a little award, you know, the little award for each mascot in my group and things like that. So, you know.
Yeah, I think awards, you can use soft toys.
Yeah.
Broken awards,
right.
Really good.
Well, and my club, my group of masters here is so new that this is really the first year that we had a nice solid group of 10 or 12 people who were sculling on a regular basis, because it's only the third year of my club. And so, you know, it's kind of, you know, helping people who are also new to the sport. We have a couple of really solid veteran scullers who've become members of our club, but we have a lot of new scullers too. So I think bringing them into this part of the culture of the sport is important, because new people, when they start rowing, when they're in their 50s or 60s, they don't always know about these traditions that we have. So I think it's a nice thing to do for people who are new to the sport as well. So
I think making new traditions is also a good thing. Yeah.
There's some really funny ones out there, though, I know. So
yeah, maybe you guys should all be telling us about your club's quirky traditions, which, yeah, definitely worth having. I've got a little update to give you about the Masters Rowing in New Zealand project. We're about to have our 4th open meeting where we pick a topic of conversation and we then discuss how we can improve that for our local clubs and members. And the topic for tonight is coaching. And one of the things that we are going to be working on is how to have some national training camps so that a representative from every single training group can come and be in a camp for a weekend with other people from other clubs and an experienced masters coach. So I will be able to report more about that next time. But we feel quite strongly, as you know, that having a voice for masters is important, but also then producing and creating events and resources that are really useful for masters is also going to be helpful, because then other people don't have to reinvent wheels.
Absolutely.
we've also got a little idea, which may not happen, but there's a local regatta for high schoolers that's on a Saturday. And we're going to approach the regatta and ask them if they could wait to remove the lane boys until Sunday, and whether us masters could just do a quick little scrimmage with some local clubs on the Sunday morning. So I don't know if that'll happen, but it might be that something you could do yourself.
Absolutely. That would be fun.
Someone says, I have to go, but I love this. I will finish watching later. Well, whoever you are, thank you. And we will see you later. I think that's pretty much it. Have you got anything more to add, Marlene?
No, I think, I've got a lot on my mind for tomorrow, but I'm excited and, just I love talking masters, and I'm really happy that US Rowing has made, honestly, such a big point to include masters topics in the overall conference versus it being just sort of a separate group. It used to be a kind of a separate group focusing on masters. And I think that bringing, they've really made some very good steps to bring masters rowing into the main curriculum. And I think it's great. I'm very excited about it.
Fantastic. So till next time, everybody, thank you for watching Faster Masters Rowing Radio, for listening and hanging out with us. We broadcast once a week live. You can watch us live or pick the recording up later. Faster Masters Rowing Radio is where having a rowing coach only makes you better. Following a program gives you a true pathway to becoming a confident sculler who's respected by your peers. You can become the athlete that you want to row with. Stick around and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.